for more than a year. Angry, hateful letters. Some hate mail began to arrive at the Cool Ball Learning Center, a public elementary school in the Pocono Mountains in eastern Pennsylvania. The letters were unsigned and sent to the principal, making serious allegations against a first-grade reading teacher, Joanne Chambers. She had been teaching in the school district for the past 8 years.
Chambers brought pot into school and then showed it in the faculty room, just like it was a big joke.
I thought it was just somebody, a disgruntled employee. I just wanted to know who it was, and I thought it was a thing that you could, sit down with that person and talk it out and fix it.
Soon, letters were sent to Joanne Chambers herself at both home and at school.
I can get you in one try. No one will ever prove it. They may not think so, but I'm smarter than all of you. You stupid bitch.
Letters were also distributed to other teachers, found in mail slots in the faculty lounge. Joanne Chambers was popular with students and was an unlikely target of a hate campaign. She was married with a 10-year-old son and had no known enemies.
I can speak with assurance about Joanne's teaching abilities. She's highly recommended by other teachers in the district. She was also highly respected by parents. She was an outstanding teacher. All her recommendations show that.
It appeared that someone had a grudge against her.
Look in Chambers' desk. She seems to like Jack Daniels.
Chambers found the whiskey bottle in her desk drawer and said personal items were missing.
There were things missing from my drawers. The picture.
A hidden camera captured several teachers entering Joanne Chambers' vacant classroom. One removed Chambers' coffee cup from her desk. It was Paula Nawrocki. The photograph of Joanne Chambers stolen from her desk was pasted onto a nude picture, photocopied and distributed throughout the schoolyard, mailed to parents' homes, and a copy was taped to the door of a local store.
There were phone calls to parents saying that I was a lesbian, that I had AIDS, that, that I shouldn't be teaching their children. I can't tell you what, that was such a violation of my being.
That it was making things worse instead of better.
She was questioned about the incidents at the Coolbaugh Township Police Station, and she told Chief Flugel, "Tony, if I'm doing it, I don't know I'm doing it." And then she later said, "You'll never prove it's me."
I told him that I needed his help, because this didn't make any sense. I needed somebody to really look into the whole situation accurately, the way it evidently needed to be done. And I tried to make it sound as ridiculous as possible, that if I had done whatever was going on, I didn't know I was doing it, which was totally absurd in my mind, in my way of thinking.
Later on, she would say that she meant, "It's not me, and you'll never prove it's me because it wasn't me."
Nawrocki said she was videotaped taking Joanne Chambers' coffee cup because Chambers had asked Paula to get it for her. The surveillance videotape shows that Joanne Chambers and Paula Nawrocki were both in the classroom and left together just moments before Paula. The face she saw was a face she knew. When Joanne Chambers called police to report that a car forced her off the highway, she said she recognized the face of the other driver.
I saw her. She looked at me. I know that Paula Nawrocki was driving the car.
Paula Nawrocki denied the allegation, but was arrested and charged with harassment, stalking, simple and aggravated assault, making terroristic threats, and recklessly endangering the life of Joanne Chambers, over 100 counts in all.
I was finding out that I was charged with many, many horrendous things I had never heard about before.
The school district suspended her from her teaching position with pay. If convicted, she could serve 5 years in jail. After Nawrocki's arrest, the letters, threats, and mailings stopped. Nawrocki maintained her innocence and was swabbed for epithelial cells, which come from saliva. DNA was found on the back of one set of stamps and on one envelope flap. The number of cells recovered was so small that forensic scientists performed a process called polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, which amplifies or copies the DNA in those few cells to make enough for testing. The DNA from the stamps and envelope flap were added to the PCR mixture, a chemical cocktail of enzymes, nucleotides, and primers, then placed in a thermal cycler to amplify. A colored development process produces a series of blue dots, visualizing which variation of the DQ alpha gene is present in the genetic profile. If there is even one base difference in the 3.3 billion base pairs on an individual's DNA strand, the DNA went one step further. They wanted to find the individual whose DNA was on the threatening letters.
If Paula didn't do it, there's only one other person that could have done it. Because there's only one other person that knew the circumstances of all these letters, that knew everything that was going on, that was Joanne Chambers.
Was it possible that the alleged victim wrote the threatening letters and mailed them to herself? The defense uncovered some information which pointed in that very direction. Police in the neighboring town of Carbondale, Pennsylvania, told defense investigators that Chambers had a history of reporting suspicious incidents from burglaries to fires.
They said every crime that she's been a victim of has some weirdness attached to it. And just off the top of their heads, they started relating different crimes that supposedly she's been a victim of.
When Anderson researched Chambers' employment history, he learned that Chambers reported similar threatening letters and also reported finding feces on her classroom chair while in another school district years earlier.
She has a pattern of being a victim. And having a pattern of being a victim shows one thing to me. I'm not an expert at all this, but it shows me you want attention from whoever. She wants to be the center of attention.
To find out if it was Joanne Chambers' DNA on the threatening letters, Jim Anderson needed her DNA profile. For that, he looked in her trash. Once trash is placed at the curbside, the owner gives up all legal rights to what's inside.
One plastic drinking straw. One used, looks like toilet tissue.
Plastic straws, used tissues, and a cotton swab with earwax. All items with possible genetic material were sent to the DNA lab for testing. Dr. Lichtenwallner identified two different DNA profiles from the mucus, saliva, and earwax samples from the Chambers trash. One of those DNA profiles matched the DNA from the stamps and envelope flap.
The DNA from one of the household members was similar to the DNA on the back of the stamps in the envelope.
With these DNA results, the defense team demanded that all charges against Paula Nawrocki be dropped. The prosecution refused, and Joanne Chambers provided a blood sample for further DNA testing. Once again, Joanne Chambers' blood DNA matched the DNA from the stamps and the envelope flap.
You can see how all 5 genetic markers line up perfectly between the DNA of Joanne Chambers and the DNA from the back of the postage stamps.
The odds of someone in the random U.S. population having the same combination took the jury less than 2 hours to reach a verdict. They found Paula Nawrocki not guilty.
Reaction after the verdict was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. The alleged victim was being treated as the defendant, and the defendant was being treated as the victim. In the hallway, jurors sought out Paula Nawrocki and hugged her and told her how much they loved her, while Joanne Chambers left the courthouse virtually ignored.
Joanne Chambers denies that she created the campaign of threats against her.